beseech member states of the Gulf of Guinea Commission to help contain and eradicate the menace caused by these acts of criminality in the region.
President Buhari tasks member countries of the Gulf of Guinea Commission on security.
The fighting is ongoing and there hasn't been a ceasefire. Only this morning, people were dying right in front of us.
Tens of thousands flee to other African countries from war in Sudan.
With the scenario we have, it's automatic that the Senate President will come from this House.
10th National Assembly. Senators agree to respect decision of ruling APC on leadership positions.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss incessant building collapse in Nigeria.
Well, let us begin with this quote from a building expert. A building collapse is man-made, and if the right thing is done, we will avert building collapse. End of quote. Now, the emphasis is on the if. This phenomenon of building collapse across the country has become a worrisome trend in the country today.
Certainly, Kyria, now a properly constructed building is expected to stand the test of time, and it's also supposed to provide shelter to the dwellers and income for the developers. But the rising rate of building collapse in the country is dashing the expectations of many who are investing in the real estate sector.
And a lot of investments have gone down the drain due to building collapse in different parts of the country. And more worrisome is the number of lives lost to building collapse in recent years.
Now, well, with the latest incident of a 7-story structure still under construction on Banana Island in Lagos going down, the governor of the state, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has directed that all developments on Banana Island be placed on hold, subject to a comprehensive audit by officials of the Lagos State Building Development Control Agency.
As if that was not enough, another 3-floor building under construction at Ladipo, Luole Street in Apapa partially collapsed. The structure was said to have caved in due to distress compounded by thunder strike from early morning rainfall. Luckily, no life was lost, as almost all the workers had left the site for the Salah break.
Now, a preliminary report indicates that the building owner only obtained provisional development permit for 2 floors, as against the 3 floors being constructed, while the developers, of course, ignored the stop work and seal up orders of the Lagos State Building Control Agency. And, of course, they continued with the construction secretly.
And we have this kind of story recently in other incidents of building collapse, that the ignoring of directive from the agency concerned. Now, according to the Building Collapse Prevention Guild in Nigeria, Lagos State has recorded 115 collapse incidents in the last 10 years, the highest in the country so far.
And also, the Lagos State branch of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers has reported that in the period between 2011 and 2019, there were no fewer than 88 building collapse incidents in the country. Now, of those numbers, just about 21 of them occurred outside Lagos, which means that well over 60 of building collapse incidents occurred in Lagos.
Now, we can't also forget in a hurry the 42 people who lost their lives in the high-rise luxury building collapse at Ikoyi, Lagos in 2021. Their families and Nigerians are yet to recover from that devastation. Abuja, the FCT, has had its fair share of building collapse. The most recent was at Wuse 2 at Demola Adetokunbo Crescent, where a wall collapsed on the workers.
Now, professionals in real estate development have called for partnership with the federal government and relevant agencies to create a saner engineering environment where quacks, of course, are not in business. This is to enable them to check the menace of building collapse in the country.
And many documented cases of building collapse in Nigeria have been attributed to the use of defective or substandard building materials, no requisite technical knowledge, and non-adherence to building codes and standards.
Other factors include the use of non-professionals and high level of corruption, whereby some regulators overlook anomalies during construction and erring developers are allowed to cut corners. Now, what can or should be done to bring sanity to the very critical sector of real estate development that is supposed to take care of one of the very basic and fundamental needs of humans, which is shelter? That's our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today, as we discuss yet again incessant building collapse in Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I thank you for tuning in.
And I am Kirian Umayo. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live as always on the network service of the NTA and from our headquarters studio here in Abuja. As usual, we'll bring you other segments that will form the total package for today's program. For now, let's bring in our colleague, Farmer Pai, with the news highlights. Hello, Farmer.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Kieran. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has stressed the necessity for member countries of the Gulf of Guinea Commission to remain alive in their responsibilities by making the organization a pride of place and worthy of high ideals it was established for. He said the aspiration of the Commission does not only define what member states stand for, but what the region can always collectively achieve. This was at the third extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the Gulf of Guinea Commission in Accra, Ghana.
I beseech member states of the Gulf of Guinea Commission to show more political commitment at the highest level of government to address these maritime security issues, to help curtail and eradicate the menace caused by these acts of criminality in the region.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and that of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development have expressed concern over the situation in Sudan, saying the federal government has published emergency numbers for stranded Nigerians. The numbers are currently displayed on your TV screens. A joint statement by the two ministers, Geoffrey Onyema and Sadia Farouk, urged parents to advise their wards to be calm as concerted efforts are being made to evacuate all Nigerians stranded in Sudan. This is in a joint statement signed by the permanent secretaries of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management and Social Development. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of Sudanese are fleeing to other African countries for safety following new gunfire and shelling amid shortage of food and water.
The fighting is ongoing and there hasn't been a ceasefire. Only this morning, people were dying right in front of us. There were people walking by the Nile who died. They were hit by shrapnel from anti-craft gunfire and others that fell into the Nile. Right now, people are living.
And to health, malaria is reported to affect millions of people every day. Over the years, efforts to eliminate the dreaded disease has been a Herculean task. It is against this backdrop that the 2023 World Malaria Day has as its theme, Time to Deliver Zero Malaria, Invest, Innovate, Implement.
We have to approach it in terms of short-term measures and then the long-term measures. In the short-term measures, we can use the basic preventive measures, such as use of the insecticide-treated malaria mosquito nets, use of IPT, that's intermittent preventive treatment in pregnant women and in children under 5 years, use of fumigation, and then, of course, environmental sanitation and all that.
Now, as the race for the Senate presidency for the 10th Assembly continues to heat up, some APC senators say they will respect the decision of the party in deciding the leadership position of the Senate. The senators and some past ones who visited President-elect Bola Tinubu at his residence in Abuja spoke to newsmen and believe zoning will play a key role in selection of the principal officers of the Senate. Other party bigwigs, including the APC National Chairman Abdullahi Adamu, also visited the President-elect, who returned to the country on Monday after his post-election break.
It's very, very necessary that if we have to have a stable government, a very peaceful separation of powers.
With the scenario we have, it's automatic that the Senate President will come from this house.
So the chances for somebody like me will be very high because of the fact that my colleagues already know my track record.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Nigeria loses 2.3 trillion naira to oil theft in 1 year as Nigerians crave for more investment in that sector. Let's now join Vivian Ezeadiefe for business news.
A recent analysis by major stakeholders in the oil and gas sector indicates that Nigeria has lost a handsome amount, which is to the tune of 2.3 trillion naira between March 2022 and March 2023. This huge loss is premised on pipeline vandalism and resultant oil theft, which deprived Nigeria to produce and sell 65,700,000 of oil within the period under review. In another development, a former senior special assistant to the president on Niger Delta, Ita Enang, has called for more commitments to the ongoing diversification of the economy. He emphasized that the leading role played by other sectors of the economy in achieving a strong gross domestic product (GDP) is the clear manifestation of potential of these sectors.
In their chosen field, because the music is selling. I was enthused when I saw the outgone British diplomat in Nigeria, you know, the lady, Anne, the ambassador of the United Kingdom to Nigeria, danced so wonderfully to the Nigerian music. So that's art, and that means even in their country, they love it, you know, and in UK, in US, all over. And you see in international sporting arena, you see Nigerian music played. You know, you see when fans are even appreciating a goal or something, they can burst into songs of Nigerian music showing appreciation. And I'm sure you all saw the president of I think Guinea or something dancing buga. You know, these are art. This is money, talent, which we should use in exporting. So we should encourage others and Nigerians to take into different areas and let oil be a resource.
He also called for commitment to agriculture by the federal government and the subnational governments. A quick look at the details of today's tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Vivian Ezeadiefe.
All right, thank you very much, Vivian, for the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Our review of the papers comes up next.
All right, and let's welcome Chukwudi Okoli Waja. who is here with us, as usual, for today's analysis of what the papers are saying.
Thank you.
In this part of the world.
Now I'm looking at the midweek, with all optimism. Good to be here. Hello, Kingsley.
Good to see you, and I hope you had a pleasant evening yesterday. All right, Kieran?
Yeah. Okay, let's begin with the Punch newspaper. Above the name flag of the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper. National Assembly leadership. Tinubu, NWC meet contestants. That's on page 2. Federal government, U.S. firm sign MOU on $15 billion rail project. That's on page 23. Buhari, president-elect, governors mourn renowned journalist Enahoro. That's on page 30. Okay, now below the name flag we have a Sudan conflict. That's the kicker. Evacuation begins today as federal government releases 150 million naira, hires 40 buses. 2 riders to that. Federal government opposes night road trip. Logistic hiccups delayed Tuesday's planned evacuation. 3 Nigerian embassy officers escaped death following attacks by Sudanese or Sudan's rapid support forces. All right, so you get all that on page 2. The photo story here is one that is really not very sweet, so to speak. That's the flood somewhere in Lagos, Lagos-Abuja Expressway in Patako, in Ogun State. See the pushing there, including a lady assisting to push the bus away from the flooded road. Perhaps the bus broke down at some point. And below that, we have ex-presidential candidate asks court to stop May 29 inauguration. It's on page 7. 18,000 Benue residents displaced in April alone, according to SEMA. It's on page 7. Federal government calls power firms from national grid. You get that on page 19 of the Punch newspaper. Kingsley.
Okay, we also have the Nation, and the following headlines are on the front page of the paper. NDDC to link oil-producing states with $15 billion rail project. NDDC to link oil-producing states with $15 billion rail project. Minister, Nigeria expects 100,000 malaria vaccine doses next year. 15 new judges for Kaduna High and Sharia customary courts. Police deploy CPs in Zamfara, Yobe, 9 others, and FCT. Ex-Daily Times MD Peter Enahoro dies in UK at 88. He wasn't MD, he was actually a sole administrator. Ex-Daily Times Peter Enahoro dies in UK at 88. Sudan, 40 buses move 2,400 Nigerian students to Cairo. Air peace waiting in Egypt for airlift. Labour Party factions battle over Obi's petition and others at tribunals. High-level talks begin over Senate President and Speaker. President-elect and APC leaders meet. Aspirants intensify lobby. JAMB reschedules UTME for candidates. Autumn sends bill on pension to House. Details on page 5. Chukudi.
Thank you. Excuse me. It is quite a happy thing to observe that evacuation seems to have started. You just said that about 3,000 Nigerian students have been ferried to Cairo. Evacuation is beginning today, or I should say continuing, as federal government releases 150 million naira, hires 40 buses. Gentlemen, I want to say so far so good, because I was really developing a panic on a personal basis. It does seem that Sudan's regular army and the rapid support forces are indeed observing the 72-hour temporary ceasefire they declared. The question is, can this develop into an attempt at real peace? It is good that many Nigerians are now at the border, many Africans are at the border, close to, crossing to the other side to safety. But just as I was saying, is it not possible that we develop this 72-hour truce into attempts that will pave way to real peace? Africa by now should be spared the anguish, pain, and embarrassment from what I think are primordial wars. Imagine two generals are feuding and the nation is watching them in bated breath. It doesn't make sense. There are certain things we should not be entertaining anymore on the continent. But then that's not what it is. That's not what the situation is. We have to be grateful that 3 embassy staff, Nigerian embassy staff, escaped unhurt. They purportedly were being attacked by elements of the rapid support forces. It could have been a sad story, but so far so good. And I think we should be happy that that has happened. That is, their safety has been guaranteed. Okay. Quickly, on the local scene, just before we talk about Peter Pan, let's not forget that our politicians are still engaged in maneuvers to pick a speaker and a Senate president. We should be talking about the party with the highest number of representatives, of course. This is a situation where majority carries the day. Let them politic, let them maneuver, let them engage whatever level of negotiation they want to engage. The most important thing to the man in the street is picking officers that would help us bring about wonderful legislation for the smooth governance of Nigerians and for their ultimate development. That's what it's all about. Every other thing is, by the wayside. Then our big uncle, Icon, perhaps recognized as Nigeria's foremost international journalist to date, Peter Pan, Peter Nahoro, is gone. Can we just say, may his soul rest in perfect peace? The man was a gutfly, so to speak, near Maverick. He wrote, spontaneously, vehemently and boldly, self-asserting, and his topics were quite moving. May his soul rest in peace again.
All right. Okay, let's pick up this one on the humanitarian ground. 18,000 Benue residents displaced in April alone. That's by SEMA.
Yes. This insurgency issue leading to IDPs all over the place and the hotbeds of Nigeria. I want to say that I am happy that things are beginning to settle in Jos. Kirian, I was in Jos when a lot of atrocities were happening by God knows who. And it wasn't easy at all. You heard stories of children being thrown in wells. It was, I represented a TV station then, so I know what I'm talking about. Each time we're sending out reporters, it was not just goose pimples all over the place. There was real fear. We translated into mortality, on the part of the ordinary people. Exactly. So this displacement you're talking about, it is not just that people are unsettled from normal livelihood. It carries implications. The Food and Agricultural Organization is projecting that hunger is going to torment some parts of the African continent for the next 3 years. Nigeria is one of them. Ask yourself, you go to the market, you see a lot of things on display, yet prices are prohibitive. It is because supplies are not up to demand. And so the displacement we're talking about, first of all, affects livelihoods. Agriculture, first of all, jumps into my mind. We really have to do something fast to continue the effort to stop what is happening that is giving Nigerians sleepless nights. It is not right. It is not.
Okay, thank you. I want to return to the issue of Peter Pan. That's Peter Nahoro. His obituary was announced just as that of Harry Belafonte, the African-American singer, actor, and civil rights
Kingsley,
activist.
I'm sorry.
Also was
At
announced.
the first annual Global Carnival, Harry Belafonte.
Yeah, Dave. Everybody, of course, you remember Dave. So Harry Belafonte was 96 years old and he passed away in Manhattan on Monday. May his soul rest in peace. Of course, he was pretty close to the civil rights leaders of that generation of the 50s and the 60s. That's to say Martin Luther King Jr. And it carried on even after the Civil Rights Act was passed in the U.S., carried on with his activism. He was a UNICEF ambassador for many years. He was also on the forefront of those who campaigned against apartheid. I remember he participated in a concert, the conference in Harare in 1987, 88. I'm not quite sure now, probably sometime in 1988 at the Harare International Conference Center. So Harry Belafonte dead at 96. And back home, Peter Pan, who was just passed on at 88. Peter Pan, as you said, rightly so, Chukwudi, was one of Nigeria's greatest journalists. No question about that.
In a class of his own.
In a class of his own. And there are many points to note about this. He came from a family of also eminent media persons.
Elitist.
Chief Anthony Enahoro, those who know the history of Nigeria and the motion for independence. And the floor of the House, etc. and so forth. Chief Anthony Enahoro was his elder brother. And then one of the younger brothers also was on the Nigerian Television Authority, Mike Enahoro, reading the news.
I liked his news reading.
So Peter Pan was at some point the youngest person to have edited the Daily Times. The Daily Times was, before of course it went under and then they tried to resuscitate it, the largest newspaper conglomerate that this country had ever witnessed. Yeah. Of course, in 1966, Peter Pan wrote a pamphlet, a very significant pamphlet, How to Be a Nigerian. And that pamphlet continues to resonate with the traits and characteristics of Nigerians. He went on exile and then, of course, became a stringer for a number of international publications and became a publisher himself, publishing the Africa Now magazine. It was a great publication. I remember I used to read it in the early 80s.
Fine editing, first class.
Fine, absolutely so. I remember Mohammed Babu, was a Tanzanian and writing for him. So Peter Pan, great journalist, may his soul rest in peace. Now, one thing to note, I know that there are generational issues. We are applauding Chief Anthony Enahoro, we are applauding Mike Enahoro, and now, of course, Peter Enahoro, Peter Pan, who has passed away. Ask yourself, how many degrees did Peter Enahoro have? How many degrees? And today, you have persons in different parts of the world, and especially in some parts of the world, chains of degrees, and they can't string one or two sentences together.
And people are
neither are they memorable in the field of
parading the academic PhD.
Okay.
As if,
that's okay for.
Kirian, before we leave, very important. What he said is very important. How many degrees? At a point, reporters of the BBC were secondary school certificate holders.
See, this thing is about, is about a gift of nature. I want to believe, quite frankly, that to some reasonable extent.
It's a flair thing.
It's a flair thing.
Thank
you. You come with it, But on a cheering note, I was happy yesterday. I watched a club known as the Girona, beating Real Madrid. As a matter of fact, they utterly destroyed.
Somebody wants to start a fight this morning. The director is about to punch the button.
Completely humiliated Real Madrid. Now, let me tell you this: in the last century, this century, this is the first time a single individual is scoring 4 goals against Real Madrid. I mean, since 1947. So this young man demolished. As a matter of fact, he has reduced that club, which many people
know him. Argentinian.
Yeah, Argentinian. Castellanos. Yeah. Right. Dangerous boy. The last goal, I'm not sure Benzema has seen that kind of goal in his lifetime as a player. The last goal, the fourth one, it's a thunderstorm. A thunderstorm. I appreciate that. And
now the final question. Kingsley, has somebody successfully looked for trouble in your direction?
No.
Los Blancos dealt with yesterday. The man in white.
I think it's made. There are points to note. Look, congratulations to these strugglers called Girona for their victory over Real Madrid. You win one battle and you think you have won the war. These are teams that are not anywhere near the top 4.
Exactly.
Hang on a second, please. They're not anywhere near the top 4. They're in the top 5. you play with a virtual second or even third 11 of Real Madrid. The top guy, this was a second, this was a reserve goal.
I would not get away with it.
No, hang on a second. If you watch the match, this is a reserve goalkeeper.
We are done
and you
for
could,
this segment.
and you could see the jitters in him. Where were the top midfielders? Where were so it was.
I agree.
They came. Hang on a second. They came with several of their reserve players to come and handle that match. When you know that you have bigger battles ahead of you, what do you do? So these things happen.
I agree with you. Let's round off. I agree with you. They did. That was what happened. They brought 10-11 or whatever it is, but the name is Real Madrid, and they went down.
Bottom line, Real Madrid was defeated.
On this note, let us conclude.
No, we are concluding. It's not the program.
We have known.
Where is Girona? Where is Girona in Copa del Rey final?
Girona is even second to the last on the table. No problem. But they beat you.
But you saw what. You saw what Southampton tried to do to Arsenal.
Well,
you saw what Southampton is at the rock bottom. And Arsenal is right there at the pinnacle.
Beware of relegation-bound teams.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's the most dangerous element you can ever encounter.
Thank you for
coming. You saw their fans. I think they are sitting on the more than 5,000 fans.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's a newspaper review for today. We'll return again tomorrow for more on this segment. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we shall focus our attention on collapse building saga in Nigeria. All right, there are standard procedures to follow when construction of a building anywhere, even on water. The rising incidence of building collapse across the country has taken a worrisome dimension, especially with the loss of lives in some cases. Joseph Osen takes a look at the issues surrounding incessant building collapse as a backgrounder for our conversation.
Last Sunday witnessed another building collapse in Nigeria. A 3-floor building under construction in Apapa, Lagos State went to the ground just after a similar incident in Okoye about a week ago, where a 7-story building under construction collapsed, trapping a number of people under its rubble. Last week in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, another building under construction in Wuse 2 collapsed, injuring many. These are the latest among the many cases of reported building collapse across the country. Building Collapse Prevention Guide 2022 report indicates that at least 61 buildings collapsed across the country, with Lagos leading with 20 cases. The record has it that in the 48 years period between 1974 to 2022, Nigeria recorded 541 incidents. Lagos State stays on top of the table with 322 incidents, followed by Anambra, 20, Oyo, 19, Abuja, 18, Kano, 17, Ogun and Delta states, recording 12 each. Almost every part of the country has had its share of the disaster, with many of the cases leading to loss of lives. The fact that most of the building collapse occur mainly in cities where authorities have their eyes set is a huge concern to many. But what is even more worrisome is a short period of time and increasing rate of the occurrence. Indeed, some of the causes of building collapse could be natural hazards, material fatigue, and aging. However, most of the documented cases in Nigeria, experts say, are based on human errors occasioned by developers' quest to bypass basic professional procedures of getting building plan approval, engaging the services of unqualified builders, use of substandard materials, illegal conversion of existing structures, and alteration of approved building permits. Recently, authorities in Lagos and the FCT have been on their toes increasing monitoring and surveillance to ensure structures meet standard and specification. Many structures with defects are considered substandard demolished towards curbing incessant building collapse. But recent happenings shows clearly that the country still has a long way to go. What then is the challenge? Are the professional bodies living up to expectations, or it is a case of laxity on the part of the authorities concerned? These questions and other related issues will be served on the Good Morning Nigeria table for the guests to give their perspectives.
All right, with us in the studios to discuss this issue, we'd like to welcome two of our regular guests. First, Engineer Kashim Ali is the former president of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Engineer Kashim Ali, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Also here with us in the studios is Shuaibu Umar, is of the Abuja Metropolitan Management Agency. Shuaibu Umar, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and with us as well is Engineer Professor Samson Duna, Director General and CEO, Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, NIBRE. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, when we say incessant, it simply describes the phenomenon that we are faced with. Every now and then there are reports of one structural failure in one part of the country or the other, in different parts, in River State, in Lagos, in Oyo State, in the FCT, and elsewhere where construction is going on. Are we helpless now with respect to just watching multi-story structures under construction come down? Let's begin with Professor Duna, who is of the Building and Road Research Institute. Are we helpless?
Thank you very much. Let me start by really sympathizing with the family of those that lost their beloved ones as a result of this ugly incident called building collapse. Building collapse is majority of it is associated with carelessness, man-made error that could have been avoided. But it's unfortunate that this ugly incident is still occurring despite our level of development, despite our level of technical know-how with respect to the construction industry. We are not helpless. It is an error that can be minimized or can be avoided completely. I always look at a building as an industrial process. An industrial process has to do with undergoing each stage of work, each stage of production, each stage of doing things. You must do it in a proper manner. At each stage, if it is not carried out properly, you have a catastrophe. And that catastrophe culminates itself into building collapse. Let's take, for instance, now, you want to build a house. What are the various steps you need to carry out before embarking on the project? It's very, very necessary as a designer. You sit down and first of all visit the site. How does the site look like? Will you sit down in Lagos, a site is in Kano, and you start asking an information, please, what is the bearing capacity of that soil so that I will design in Lagos? You need to visit the site to identify how does the location looks like. How does the water flows in terms of rainy season? Then the next thing is that you need to have an idea of the type of soil. What are the types of soil that is there? So that it enables you to come up with a foundation that is applicable to the type of soil. Then you come up with your design in line with your client brief. Your design ends up in bringing out working drawings. All these are different stages that you need to carry out properly. And if it is not done, just like a product that will be faulty, and that product will end up becoming a building collapse. So as I earlier mentioned, it is an unavoidable thing, something that we can really stop it, and it can be stopped if the real thing is put into position.
Okay, thank you. What actually is also worrisome is the fact that some of the building collapses also involved real estate developers who have been in building for a long time. In fact, it is their profession. And they also get involved in this building collapse. So that's the major issue, because if the people responsible for real estate development, building for people to buy, are beginning to have experience of collapse building, then there's a problem. let me go to Dr. Kashimali. So during your tenure as president of Korean, I happen to have covered you for some 2-3 years, you know, so I followed some of the procedure of Korean. And in some occasions, in those reports, you had invited us to come and discuss collapsed building and the actions Korean has taken, you know, to ensure that that menace is culled. But it appears that it is continuing. Even the measures you put in place then, I recall there were even punishments for those of them who were found guilty of engaging in suppress. So to give us an idea, let's have viewers really know, because when we're talking about regulation, we're talking about incessant, meaning that it is continuing. Give us viewers an idea of what you understand about this building collapse and the efforts you may have made in your own time as a Korean president, the chief regulator of engineering practice in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kirian. You know, when I was invited for this discussion, I was even confused. You know, just where do we start? What do we say again that I have not said? But you see, the background report, there was a question whether it's a technical problem or maybe policy. I'm paraphrasing now. And I want to say straight off that it's policy. You also asked a question here offline, whether why our building is not collapsing in villages. And I told you because they use hard-earned money. So they take every precaution. But even the so-called estate developers that have come up in recent times, if you check their backgrounds, some of them have no training at all in built environment industry. All they are interested in is how to collect people's money. And they want to move from one side to another as quickly as possible because that is more money. I've had a personal experience with an individual, and I was told later that I had made a mistake by falling into his hand. He has a knack for collecting people's money, abandoning the project, going to the next site, and keep going. That today, as young as the guy is, he has about 100 cases in court, and he's not afraid. So that again is, so that I'm trying to say that technical issues relating to collapse have been dealt with sufficiently, because if you look at the story of these collapses that we have had in recent times, all investigations point to people not having relevant professionals on site. Even the huge Koyi collapse, there was, how can you do that kind of structure, collecting so much money and not do it? And when we check the guy's background, he had done a similar thing, even in London. His building collapsed in London. And it was still not a red flag for people in Lagos to say, no, this guy has a red flag from London, so we must closely monitor him in giving approval. Abuja has done a bit well. I'm trying not to talk about it because the regulations that we have is for the professional. And I'll tell you now that the professionals are careful, because once anything, any failure results from your negligence or any action at all, your license will go. You have no license to practice. So it means you have no job. And your family is a disgrace to your family, because you say you're an engineer, for instance, and then suddenly people now say it's in the news that you're, because I always make sure everybody who was guilty was in the news. I'll call your full name, put your picture that you did this. And people are careful with that now. There should be that name and shame attitude. But the policy issue that is the problem is that quite often when these things happen, reports are, in fact, committees are set up, reports are compiled, and when they get to whoever has the power to approve punishment, he will now backslide. Just like the governors and everybody do with convicted prisoners. That's what they are doing. Once it gets to the table, there was a case I know, and I don't even know what to say where it happened, where people were recommended for dismissal. The most senior among them was dismissed immediately because he was, but a traditional ruler from his place went and begged for him. So they returned him, and because of that, they had to return the remaining people. So this certainly is not a technical issue. So if people come if you have power over in the construction industry, you must come into that position with some anger. Anger to see that what is being done wrong should be corrected. If you don't have that level of anger, you can't succeed. If you take you back in history, when in this city, why the collapses have not come up, because there are a lot of buildings going on, but you don't have collapses. There was a time we had a lot of anger, and you didn't need you didn't need the minister's approval to go and pull down a structure that was improperly located or not being properly constructed. There must have free will given to people who have responsibility for doing this. That once you are satisfied and you have done the documentation, just go ahead and let them come and report to the minister. That is the only way we can stop this thing. If we don't have an organized way of doing it that way, that the person responsible, the technical should have the overall power to bring out the building or keep it standing. If we don't do that, if we need to get approval of policy makers to be able to pull down a structure, we'll have this thing. It will continue. Because the sentiments are always there. Because if it's either I'm there and it belongs to Kingsley, and Kingsley calls me and says, hey, Kingsley, I can't pull down your structure. But if somebody I put down, I say, Kingsley, I'm sorry. Oh, why didn't you tell me? Even though I'll just, but no, I know it's already down. So I'll sympathize with you. But I will not have prevented. But if I have to, so there should be no waste of time. Once you confine somebody is sick, there are some issues that when you are sick, you take the hospital. Once the doctor is convinced that this is emergency, you need to operate. They go ahead and operate. They don't want to CMD to come and approve that it should be operated. The same thing. A structure that is standing in the wrong place or is not properly being constructed is a danger to society, because it's a weapon of mass destruction. Because only if people are lucky not to be dead, that's when their lives will be spared. And you can never guarantee when people will be there. Even if you say at midnight, people will sleep in these structures. And some of them, when they are killed, because they are nobody, in quote, nobody reports them, they will say, no, nobody died. Whereas a lot of people who were living in, who had that place as home, died. So I see that we have enough policies, we have, enough regulation, because we have the engineering regulation monitoring that is in current. No engineer in Nigeria, no structural engineer will mess up with his certificate. Because if you do it, there's no mercy. There's no mercy about it. We have structure that you don't even have to go to council for approval. We have the investigation panel. It sits independently. Once they establish prima facie case is established, you have a lawyer who is there. They move it straight to tribunal. Tribunal passes judgment. The judgment is not approved by anybody. Nobody approves the judgment. Once his judgment is given, it's binding. And you can only go to court if you want to. But otherwise, your case is finished there, and the tribunal rule that your license should be withdrawn. And we did it. There's a friend of mine, unfortunately, who was a victim of that. The day we passed judgment, he died. The pain was so much for him. He died. And I cried that day. But that has to be done. So it's not technical. We need policy adjustment to help so that our country will not be in disgrace. The disgrace is too much. When people are building 100-story buildings all over the world, and we were just building it, every time I hear they do it, sometimes I'll just say, put it off, because it's so shameful.
Well, Engineer Kashimole, thanks a lot for your candor. And as you indicated, two issues I find from your response. One is the national embarrassment that we're having to endure on account of structural failures in different parts of the country. The other one is the analogy you gave, that the unwillingness to implement sanctions against erring developers and all that is analogous to what we find. Persons who have been sentenced to death, and then the certificate, the death warrant is not signed by the chief executive because they say, well, they are reluctant. In the meantime, residents of the state have been killed left, right, and center by all kinds of criminal elements. I want to bring in now Shuaibu Umar of the Abuja Metropolitan Management Agency, still asking whether we are helpless or not. Is the government reluctant to prosecute developers and other persons who are associated with collapsed structures? Prosecute. That's...
Okay, thank you very much, Kingsley. The argument is very germane because we are in the system. We have so many of these challenges. We have a situation whereby violators of building regulations, we catch them. If it is a matter of giving approval for pulling down the structure, we don't have problem as far as that is concerned in Abuja. Because most of the approval for pulling down structures ends on the table of the coordinator, unless it is an aspect that is so high that requires the ministerial approval. Otherwise, I would say almost 85 to 90% ends on the table of the coordinator. And we don't waste time, we approve and we pull it down. Unfortunately, by the time we do the approval, we have to go and sign and mark all structures before we commence the process. And that time, the person will go to court. And the matter will be in the court. Irrespective of the strength of the offense, it will linger in the court. At times when the court gives an injunction that status quo should be maintained, you find out that the developer will go and continue development if status quo should be maintained, and then we, the authority, are prevented from pulling it down. Why should the developer not respect that status quo and pull out all the people out of the site? And by the time we go and pull down the structure again, despite this, the violation starts with the developer because he did not respect the law. And we cannot allow the development to continue. Otherwise, by the time it comes to building collapse, lives are going to be lost. So the outcry will be that we are disrespecting the judicial process. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect is that our laws are obsolete. We have an offense that needs to be punished. If we are going to fine the developer for that violation, there is a fine that will go up to 200 million naira. Unfortunately, because of the obsolete nature of our law, the developer, even if he is prosecuted, found guilty, he will not be charged. The best we can do is to make sure that we adjust everything to make it up. In fact, one of it is that we have an instance that we have the highest can go is to charge after the prosecution the developer to pay 4 million naira. Actually, he's supposed to pay not less than 250 million if we have to do that law. After the judgment, he went out, brought out the money in the boot, went back and paid it up. In the next 1 week, he has gone back to the site again. So we don't have option then to go and remove it despite that situation, because we cannot allow that to happen. Another issue is by the time we make a submission to the National Assembly. You know Abuja, our legislative arm is the National Assembly. A governor can make a submission in his state assembly because the number of the legislators there are very few. He can lobby because you have to lobby and get approval of whatever law you want to approve from the assembly. In Abuja, we have more than 300 legislators to lobby for. And that's where most of this proposal, most of this submission at the National Assembly for the review of the law that are obsolete in the FCT are still lying there. It's an equivalent tax for us at the FCT to have a law approved at the National Assembly because this peculiar nature. And unless we review that law and make sure the proper punishment is meted to these people that are violating, we are going to continue having the problem. However, we never faltered. Despite the challenge, we are still on the ground to make sure that lives are saved. If we say we are going to fold our arm and say, okay, the challenge is so heavy, we will not do anything, the blame will still be back to us. People will not understand the challenge that we are facing in terms of this legal provision in making sure that right thing is done.
Okay, my takeaway from what you've said is the issue of obsolete laws. You know, I mean, laws that shouldn't be effective by now, considering, you know, the situation in the country when that, act was signed into law. And again, the challenge for you as FCT is the fact that you have a whole National Assembly, to contend with, if you want to push any kind of law reform with respect to FCT and all that. That's understandable. But gentlemen, it doesn't really mean that this kind of challenge cannot be tackled. Now, Kashim Ali was telling us about the efforts made by Koren in terms of meting out a punishment for their members who are directly involved. But now, we also say that most of the collapsed buildings that we're talking about were handled by non-professionals. So what happens to them? Is it not close to being a criminal offense for a non-professional to venture into other person's profession illegally? And again, not just illegally, but it's also, the consequences is very bad in terms of killing of people who are working in buildings that have that construction. So what happens to those unprofessionals who are involved in it? And I want to bring you in, Prof, again here, because you are in the engineering world. What happens to should I use the Nigerian language, the alboroots in your profession, whom you have allowed to permeate so deep into the fabric of your profession to the point of erecting buildings across Nigeria without taking cognizance of regulations,
Yes, Mr. Kevin, I think, let me briefly inform you or explain to you that Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, there are no building collapse that we hardly go there. Any building collapse that happen, NIBRI is always there to carry out research. And in all our findings, based on findings that are so-called due to building collapse, we try to summarize the factors that led to building collapse, about 5. Sometimes a building will collapse due to poor design. And for this design to start, for you to start implementing this design, there must have been a body that approved that design. And that body that approved this design, if there is a fault, that body should not go scot-free. You cannot come up as a private developer to start erecting a structure. Somebody must have given you an approval. That is first thing. There was an investigation we did. And in the investigation, we discovered that the design of that story building stopped at 14th floor. But the developer added 5 on his own. And people are there when he's adding these 5. What is the responsibility of the people that approved that 14th for him to do? You are saying the person adding more floors and you kept quiet because the person is strongly connected. Another aspect we discovered as part of our investigation is the use of substandard material. Normally in Nigeria, what we use basically is reinforced concrete to design our building. The concrete can be cast in situ, that means on site. The concrete can be fabricated. It can be precast. You do it somewhere, you brought it to the site, and so on. But the basic materials are 2, steel and concrete. Steel is basically a factory product. A developer might not have a power over it. But for you to use this steel, there is a need to conduct a simple test to see if this your steel meets the standard specification. Concrete is what you have the liberty to mix in line with your design mix. Concrete has different grade, but the designer will tell you the grade of concrete to use. It can be 25, it can be 30, it can be 35, depending on the structural element. But all this on paper, do people sit down to obey these laws? So if a contractor is not obeying this law, whose fault is it? So you discover that another factor we discovered is poor supervision in terms of monitoring. Before you commence your project, somebody or a government body gave you an approval. Then, as you commence the project, you have a professional as a contractor. You have a professional as a consultant. You have a professional coming up from bodies that approve your drawing. And you have a professional coming from regulatory body. 4 sets of professionals are expected to, from time to time, visit the site to ensure that what you are doing meet up the standards. But despite all this, we experience building collapse. Then somebody somewhere is not doing his job. 4 sets of different level of supervision on a project, and the project collapse again. Kieran, you agree with me that something is wrong?
Well, Prof.
Yes.
Thank you. As Engineer Kashim said, so that we don't begin to sound like a broken record on this same subject matter. When a 14-story structure is being extended to 15, 16, 17, 18, and beyond, where were the regulatory officials? And where were those persons who were working on the site? Because those who are adding the floors, they have all the drawings. You have the drawings, you have the architectural drawings, you have the structural drawings, and you have the M&E drawings. And somebody is telling you, no, go to 15, go to 16. Which, Engineer Kashim, I want you to come in here. Look, will a passenger be telling a pilot to say, no, you are flying at 25,000 feet above sea level. No, I think we should go to 35,000 feet above sea level. No, you are 37,000 feet above sea level. Why don't you come down? That place is too high. Why don't you come down to 28,000 feet above sea level? So who is in charge of a construction project? We're talking about the complex construction projects that are collapsing all over the place. Where does the professional say, sorry, stay back, whether you are a developer or you are paying me or not, this is my job. Who is in charge?
Thank you very much. You know, these Agberos in the we found a way out in our amended law, which was approved. But we need to operationalize the law. We now said, in fact, I remember we were doing the argument that I told them, look, in the military, when they used to do their coup, if you are a civilian, instead to put your mouth in it, when they are trying, they will bring you to the tribunal, and there will be judgment on you. So we say, why can't you also, if you say you are a structural engineer, we know you are not, and you decide to practice it, come to the tribunal now. So that, but I heard some of them who they say no, but one happened when they invited them. They said they are not engineers, and they are not bound by the law. So the law says whoever is not an engineer, who now or the engineering personnel who is involved would try the person. But Korea needs the resources. You know, it needs the Federal Ministry of Justice to partner before they can do that. That is why that is not happening immediately, but it will start happening very soon. So that is it. But you see, this collapses again. I say, he said it right that it's because of people taking decisions, taking laws into their hands. Somebody wants to just maximize. He sees that maybe initially he wasn't sure how much money he had. He wanted to do 12 stories, and now he finds that he has finished it in time, and he still has some money in hand. Instead of now using it to do other things, you say, no, let me just raise it. Since I have this land, let me just raise it.
Let me just.
Yes, that's what it. But when you want to raise it, you can raise it. Nothing is impossible, but go back to the designer. And I want to give you is a particular case that happened in Giabi. Somebody way back, somebody had a mall. Then he had a space. From the wall, perimeter wall, up to the fence wall was about 25 meters. So that for parking. And he came and looked after they put the structure. He said, yeah, this one was too big. That the space was too big. He needed to increase the number of shops that he would need. So he decided to extend the beams without any redesign. No. Just the beam that terminated. Yeah, you now see he drew the beam by about 10 meters. Say 15 was okay. 15 meters was okay. That 10 you take 10 meters out of the space. He did not consult anybody. He just his workmen. They continued the beam like that for 10 meters and started building. So the weight of the beam and everything pulled the whole structure down. That's how we had that collapse in Jabi many years ago. I had the misfortune of being the chair of the investigation panel, and that was the finding. That's what caused it. So we were able to identify who are the engineers who designed originally. We caught them, architects, everybody who brought them. And they gave us letters to show that he terminated their, after the design, he said he had people to continue from there. And they continued. But he got protection, unfortunately, from a government agency that was supposed to stop him. He got protection from some people there. There was an individual who said they should leave the place. He was senior. He said he would be in charge on their behalf. So they could go and do other things. And he did that. Anyway, what I'm saying here now, collaboration between it's a syndicate thing. I want to suggest some solutions, which I've suggested over and over to this. Every city in Nigeria grows because as people become more empowered, the next thing is they want to develop property, either for their use or for economic reasons. Abuja is growing rapidly the same way. The number of personnel in the whole of AMC, even if you turn all of them into the government control officers, they cannot monitor the houses that are in Abuja. In fact, I'm shocked sometimes when I just want to have a drive. You'll be on the road, you see areas that you thought there are no buildings, and there are so many buildings there. There's no way people who do 8 to 4 job can manage that. But every district has a group of professionals. You go to Maitama, you have retired town planners, architects, structural engineers, electrical, everybody, they are there. If you go to Wuse, you see the same thing. Go to Garki. The women control, for instance, in Abuja can decide to say, look, let's have clusters. Anyway, get a group of those people together and charge them to help. But you pay them stipends. It's just like sitting allowance. They will now be in charge of monitoring structures, new and old, within their district. And they will report to the officer in charge. So they are not taking any decision on your behalf, but they are only giving you synopsis of the problems, advice. This structure that is going on, we saw something happen yesterday night. Because some of these would work, I've seen I went to work at 2 a.m. This 2 a.m., in fact, during this Ramadan, I saw a guy carrying 2 a.m. I was going to the mosque. I said, what is this? What is this? So they are but because I live in the neighborhood, if I was charged with that responsibility, I can ask questions. Stop. Because I was afraid I was in case you attack me. So I went away. I didn't want to. But I know at least I can now warn them and come back in the morning to bring the officials to come and have a look at what they have done. But I don't have that statutory power. Though in the morning, by morning, they had locked their gates and left. So I was wondering, why are they doing this
in the night?
In the night. I've had, of course, when I see such things, I normally send, because I've been in the system, I used to send messages to officials, please go and check out what is happening so that something will not happen and they will come to blame everybody. So we must have that deliberate policy. Create those pool of resources in all the districts. They can sit maybe once in a week, but every day they are working, in the sense that as they are driving by, going home, sitting down in their houses, they are seeing things happening, and they walk there to see. And when they see, because they have professional eyes, they will take record all these things. When they come to a meeting, they will bring all those things out. Everybody will bring, and they will compare notes, and they will pass it to the authority. You cannot act on them, because there is no way the staff, and the same thing is applicable to Lagos especially. Some of the structures that are coming down, in those days it was Isaleko. for obvious reasons. And even that one is greed. There are existing buildings that have been there since 1940 that have been fairly stable because they built under village condition that time. When you had your money, hard-earned money, and you were committing it, so you didn't want to violate. But now they have sold it to new generation individuals who have seen the prospect of the location. Instead of bringing the structure down, building new one, they say, no, why don't I just add?
And they add overnight.
Add overnight. But if you had a neighborhood watch, like we had a neighborhood group like that, a neighbor will cite you working at night, like I saw those people working at 2 a.m., and they will report formally. And you come in there with your powers and break in and look at it and stop work with it. So we must, for me, I say this, we look at solutions now instead of analysis.
Thanks a lot for the suggestion you have made. I believe that it's worthy of consideration by the authorities. But I asked a question. At a construction site, who is in charge? Is it the developer or is it, because sometimes you see all kinds of persons who are not supposed to be in charge purporting to be in charge. I've seen architects who are claiming to be in charge of a development project. Is it who is in charge and therefore who should take responsibility?
The project leader in a building site is the architect because he designed it. But he is like first among equals. There will be the structural engineer, the builder, the electrical and mechanical, they will be there. He doesn't oversight powers over them because they are experts in their own unique areas. So at the point of allocation, if we want to take because I always like to include all the elements, even the land to be sure that the land is well located and it is appropriate for that use, the town planner comes in first. Then, depending on the complexity, sometimes the civil engineer is able to do the survey, basic survey if it's not a complex. Other, there's a surveyor also, land surveyor who will be there, who will have a look at the site. Then you now have the geophysical people, foundation engineers who will do all those things. But the person in charge of a building site is the architect.
It's as simple as that, and that is what he wanted to know, and which is very important.
But you know why I'm saying it? You go. There have been some reports of some of these other professionals being sidelined. So, say an architect giving instructions on structural issues. Yes. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with structural issues? How do you deal with that? I mean, I know we don't have an architect amongst us here, unless there's one. How do you deal with that? And then the other professionals will just say, okay,
no, we have categorized that as quackery. If even as a structural engineer you dabble into mechanical, you are a quack. You are a quack. You know, it's a clear thing, and we have said it. When the architect says that and you decide to go along, it means you answer to a quack, and you take responsibility because his certificate does not show that he has power over that. So it's you. So you have a choice to not to honor that whether it's a request or it's instruction, or you have if it is the worst case, then you pull out. There was a case. We have noble cases. There was a hotel here in Abuja here that an engineer was involved in managing the project for the man. He got also a brainwave. He wanted to just add. And the guy said, you cannot add under this circumstance. We have to do something. He said, no, engineer, this one is a long, it will take time. Let me just do it. Say, if you choose to do it, I'll pull out. He said, okay, go. He gave him a letter of resignation. He left the site. 2 weeks after, when the whole structure came down. And when they went there, they found that the guy had written a letter of resignation which was accepted by the. So I always tell you, you have to ensure due diligence. Not just run away or say, no, it's the one who said it. Give it a writing. Let it be documented. Because if not, you are not going to have. In fact, some people have suffered. Like I say, those were people who gave just ordinary verbal resignation. You see, that is a contract. it must be terminated properly.
Okay, Kashim Ali, you have made the point. I think the understanding is simple. That is to say that in a building site, we have engineers or technicians or architects who are covering different facets of that construction. But the point is, there's no overall person in charge. The only person who is in charge, as you pointed out, is the architect who designed the structure, who will be monitoring whether the design is being followed, but not necessarily on the technicalities of doing like a gravel mixing and what have you, or knowing the kind of rods and quality that you need to be put there. But what my colleague is trying to say is that some architects assume general responsibility in buildings. It is happening. I have also experienced that. You know, some of them do well too, so to speak. You know, I mean, if your own does not collapse. Now, talking about monitoring, which Kashim Ali raised, as well as Prof here, in Abuja, for instance, I'm sure you have that issue of personnel that could be, deployed to different developing sites in Abuja. That's springing up everywhere, even at the hilltops. But now, are you thinking towards that direction of engaging perhaps casual workers who will also be professionals that will understand when somebody is adding up or when somebody is doing what is wrong at the building site? Do you have such thinking for now? Because I'm sure you don't have that in place. But he has suggested that. But for FCT, which is the capital city of Nigeria, I mean, we should not be hearing building collapse. So what are the intentions of your department at the FCT?
Thank you very much. But before I answer that question, I would like to delve into the issue of who is actually in charge of the building construction on site. I have caused just last month when we are sitting in a committee for the investigation of the last building collapse, one that happened in Guarimpa, we had an argument by the professionals. The builder say he's in charge. The civil engineer say he's in charge. Then what we have agreed then there is that, because it is all the facets of all this what have the experience that you have in the field, in all this type of circumstances, that will make us to develop a policy on who does this, who does that. At the end of it all, what we have recognized is that there must be collaboration. There must be coordination. Whoever is the head of the team that is in that building site is usually the developer that will say, okay, come and supervise my land. The developer could choose an architect. He could choose a civil engineer. Whoever is the professional that is doing that activity must bring in the civil engineer whenever the aspect is that of civil engineering in the course of the construction work. An electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, because even from the point of the approval, there are mechanical designs, there are electrical designs, there are structural designs, there are structural calculation, because we have to have a structural calculation to know whether the loads are balanced in that structure before we give the approval. So the structural engineer is very important in that. So whoever is of our head must make sure that he coordinates all these professionals in order for things to go right. It is at that point the builder say he is overallable because the building code has given. But this is an argument in the professional field. But okay. But there is a whole of argument on that.
Because why is the sorry, I'm not stopping pausing you. Why is it that in science and technology sector in this country, there's this issue of challenge of collaboration among professors, among rivalry, being territorial. This is my area, I am in charge. But knowing full well that your own area cannot make progress if you not collaborate with another man's area. Why is that so? That's in conjunction with what you are.
There is an association proposal bodies of in the building industry, APB and bodies of Nigeria that bring in all the professionals, because the town planning profession has the top rec, Town Planning Council, the engineers have current Council for Regional Engineers in Nigeria, the architects have ARCON, the surveyors have SURCON, the builders have COBON, all of which will have a head. And every year, they some sort of change the leadership, and they have collaboration at that level. That collaboration is there. But in individual voices, whenever that is a chance, it's economic problem. How do I get money? This one, he goes to market himself, and he has got a developer that has engaged him. And this developer knows this man better than this man. Whoever is handled, has been chosen by the developer to handle the project, must be bold enough to tell the developer that this one is doable, this one is not doable. We have a cost, just as she has said, even of recent we have that type of challenge. A building under construction, 3 stories, the developer has gone and added another one, and it kept it. Because the engineer, because at that time it is an engineer that is in charge of the development, he was not bold enough to tell the developer that, yes, I cannot add this. He went away, he has gone along with the proposal of the developer to go and add, even though he knows that professionally is wrong. And we have to challenge him during a course of an investigation. The other issue is all the professional bodies. I'm coming to that. The other here, all the professional bodies. The professional bodies, they don't have power to stop work on site. All what they have is they can control the license of the professional that is in the field. But actually stopping the work, it is the authority. The regulatory body is the Development Control Department. And Development Control is a multidisciplinary department. You have engineers, architects, everything, all the professionals are there. So whenever we are going for field investigation, we go in a team. And each professional will say, this is why this is wrong. And if we find things that are faulty, we say, this development must stop. And if it doesn't stop, we have the power to remove. Because we cannot allow lives to be lost. In terms of punishment, yes, we have to investigate. And we have to channel the process to the professional body that's supposed to punish the individual that has gone against the professional ethics of the profession. In terms of the civil service, if it's civil servant, we usually have a committee, a civil service committee. You know, one thing about the civil service is that there must be query, there must be this and that. Otherwise, if you do not exhaust all this process, the person that even has violated, if the process is not exhausted in line with whatever needs to be done in civil service, he can go to court. And by the time you say, okay, you have sacked up and somebody, you go to court and challenge you for sacking him without due process. And the judiciary will say, okay, he must be reinstated. What do you do?
There will be grounds for the judiciary to say he must be reinstated. Shuaibu Umar, thank you very much for your explanation. It's not a question of seeking to encourage needless litigation. I think perhaps we also need to expand the scope of responsibility. Yes, you've talked about professional accountability. If you fail as an engineer, then the engineering regulatory authorities would have control over you, have control over your license through the processes that Engineer Kashim Ali has also mentioned. Now, you have also said something about, Shuaibu, you said something about failure to comply with building code or approved plans. That the monitoring authorities, namely development control, can also come and sanction the developer right there in terms of the structure to say, stop work, you stop work, and then if you refuse to stop work, they can pull down the structure if the situation warrants that. But there is a key issue here. There is a key issue. Look, if a structure collapses and workmen or other persons who were taking shelter there die, from that, that's the least charge you can draft. I know that that's not your responsibility. The least charge you can draft is manslaughter.
Yes.
So why are we not having such charges being preferred against the developer? It has no, that then when you charge the person, you bring in all the professionals, including the development control authorities, as prosecution witnesses. You charge them. Now, a building collapses and so on and so forth. If a developer is an individual, you charge the individual. If it is a company, the company has directors. Under the new CAMA of 2020, one person can be a director. So you charge that individual. That is that director's responsibility. Why are we not having that? That is one leg of it. The other leg, and this to me is probably the saddest aspect of it, we are not having civil actions. People just, as Engineer Kashi Bali pointed out, perhaps because we're feeling that these are nobody. A workman dies on your premises, a workman, a mason or whatever, dies on, and the family just goes to go and bury the person. Look at what happened on Gerard Road. 40-something persons died in November 2021 when that structure came to. There's nothing like compensation. Elsewhere, when the families of these persons who died proceed on a class action, the hundreds of millions that you will pay. Yes, it was said the developer also died in that incident, but it wasn't developing as a developer, as an individual. He had a company, and the subscribers to that project paid into the account of that company. So you proceed against the company and its directors for civil action. So, but this is just happened. They pull out the bodies and they will say, oh, they pull out the bodies. Everybody goes home. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. All right, you are welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Professor Samson Duna, earlier you talked about one of the causative factors of frequent building collapse, which is substandard building materials in terms of reinforcement. Now, how do we overcome that challenge of using substandard materials? I'm asking this question advisedly because it has turned out that sometimes developers would prefer to go and procure building materials on their own. Again, this is because of the trust deficit between the building contractor and the developers. You need, let's say, 2 tons of 10 mm, 2 tons of 12 mm, 2 tons of 16 mm or 20 mm, depending on the nature of the structure. You say you pay for it, and then the developer, sorry, the builder who is on site, instead of buying 2 tons, we buy 1.5 tons, 1.5 tons, 1.5. Then later again another request will come. In other words, under procurement. So some developers will now say, look, I have Kingsley or Kyria will be more fitting for that. Kyria is selling iron rod. He's my friend, so I will go to him. Kyria, please, I have a building project there. Help me supply, 2 tons of each of those requirements. I'm lucky with him. He gives me the standard specification. If I'm not lucky with some other supplier, yes, I know him. I say, give me 2 tons of 16 mm, and he goes there with 14 mm. We understand now that the builders have developed an attitude to say, I'm working with the materials that the developer built. Again, as I said, because of the trust deficit, some developers had always felt cheated by under procurement by builders on site. So how do we overcome this whole issue? Why would anybody see a substandard material and use it?
Thank you very much. You spoke where it's really touching, especially with respect to steel. In Nibri, we have a machine called UTM, Universal Testing Machine. This machine tests the properties of steel. I don't want to cause an alarm, but I want to let you know that the quality of our steel produced in Nigeria is in doubt. Most of the quality of the materials in the market are substandard. Instead of using iron ore to produce this steel, most industries, most probably, I'm not sure, they might be using recycled accident vehicles as raw materials for the production of this steel. This steel is supposed to have some standard. That's what we call characteristic material strength. It's called FY, characteristic material strength for each material. We have 460, we have 410, we have 250, depending on the type of steel you're using. But I'm happy to inform you that a steel material that's supposed to be 460, what we got is about 405. What is supposed to be 410, what we got was 365. 250, we got 210. And these are material that a designer will use using the standard values. We discovered that these items are far, far below the standard. But if you look at it, you might not look at it from the contractor's point of view. It is a factory product. All he did was go into the market he bought a ready-made product he's using. But another area that we'll look at it is where contractor want to maximize profit by using quite a number that is not supposed to. For instance, for every member after designing, if you are using 20x20 as social spacing, it gives you the number, the size, the number, the spacings, the locations of the reinforcement. A designer specifies all these things very clear for everybody to read and understand. But at the point of implementation, where you are expected to use Y20, a developer will tell him that I've built a similar structure somewhere. I use Y16 and it stands. Why do you want me to spend my money? Instead of saying we're supposed to use 10, I say I better put 8 and use Y16. He has cut corners at the detriment of the design. So a developer comes with that mind to maximize profit. For the fact that he has constructed a similar project somewhere, he feels he has the overall interest of doing it. I've seen an architect on site. He's taking the responsibility of a structural engineer. He said, put Y20 here, put Y20 here, it will stand. On his own, he's a professional, he's an architect. But he has delved into the work of a structural engineer. Thereby, he didn't design, he just said, put Y4, 4Y20 here, 4Y20, put Y16 here, on his own, without designing, without checking. So in the system itself, where professionals are, we have quackery, people delving into where they are not professionals. Okay. And another aspect, as I mentioned, concrete is where the main problem is again. We can say steel. Steel is basically in the market. SON are having that responsibility of ensuring that this material meets top standard. SON will be complaining to you that they're supposed to be at the airport. They're supposed to be at the port where these items are brought in so that they will block and test the quality of this material. But they will be telling you that they are no longer at the port. They have to start pursuing reputable dealers to get this substandard material to see if these materials are good or bad. But the other aspect is the concrete, which a contractor has power over. For every design element, excuse me, for every design element, every concrete has its own grade. I mentioned it earlier. Grade is where the quality of concrete comes in. Grade 25, 1:2:3. Grade 21 1:2. These are mixed proportions, you mix. But the developer and the professional on site, they always argue. You want to finish my cement on this small job. You want to finish my cement. And you see, the idea is that the developer wants to maximize profit. A professional wants quality of the work if he knows his job. At the end, you discover that the quality of concrete is far, far below standard. Yeah. But if a visitor is coming, like on monitoring, they will try to take a sample of the concrete for testing. That sample, they make it very rich because somebody is there watching them. As the supervisor leaves the site, they go back to their mixed proportion of substandard. So you see, normally in a collapsed structure, there is what we call bonding. Even when a structure collapses, the steel and the concrete are not supposed to disintegrate. They're supposed to have a good bonding.
Yes, gentlemen, I think you have established so many facts here. The issue of why people cut corners, you know, perhaps shouldn't even come up. You know why? Because it's about integrity of the people who are involved. It's about integrity. For one to want to cheat, it's a natural phenomenon, people do it. But they're doing it in a profession that is bringing a kind of shame on the nation, especially in the building sector, the engineers who are involved, the architects of this country, and other facets of engineering profession involved in building. Now, I wanted to ask you a question, the NIBRU DG, that really has to do with the issue of local building and construction materials, to determine the most effective and economic methods of utilizing them. Your responsibility primarily is also part of developing, carrying out research into developing ways by which Nigerians can have houses economic houses, using new technology that you have put in place. Yes, of course, the normal technology to build a house, we know it. And we know that some Nigerians are cutting corners, and that's why we're having collapsed buildings. But again, if we go into utilizing research results coming from NIBRI, for instance, bringing in new methods of erecting buildings. I know you have a cement that is not the normal cement, which was locally developed, and that you can use in erecting houses in Nigeria. Would that be of help if NIBRI gets a sponsor, or perhaps someone who would like to commercialize what you're doing in terms of making it available to all Nigerians? Is it a possibility? Do you have the capacity, to churn out what could be commercialized to ensure that Nigerians will begin to experience new methods of erecting buildings?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about one of NIBRI findings, which is called pozzolana. A pozzolana basically is can be natural, it can be from waste, and I don't want to say it substitutes cement, but it complements cement in concrete production or anywhere there is cement production. NIBRI came up when the cost of cement is a little bit high, extremely high. You agree with me, there was a time a bag of cement is costing about more than 5,000 naira per bag of 50 kg of cement. So because of that, NIBRI went into production of pozzolana. And this pozzolana was produced from basically agricultural waste and from natural substance existing. We went on to China to bring a technology to produce this pozzolana, but gradually we are doing a reverse engineering on the plant. We were able to fabricate our own using local content, our own plant. As of today, we have that plant in Ota, in Ogun State. Our site is there, where we use agricultural waste and clay to come up with a bag of a pozzolana. This pozzolana, you don't use it 100%, you use it with some quantity of cement. Where you are expected to use 100 bags of cement, you end up using 70 bags of cement with 30 bags of pozzolana. You mix it and you get a material even looking far stronger than when you use it with pure cement. And the good thing is that you are producing it from waste. If you use that waste, you are reducing the level of pollution in the society. So we use that to produce quite a lot of products.
Can it be commercialized?
It can be. There was a time we produced that material at pilot stage, hoping that we'll get an investor to come in. We cannot produce cement everywhere. We are not that aspect. But as a research institute, we can produce a pilot scheme, invite an inventor to come and help us to commercialize it. That has been our goal. But we have compressed art blocks, which we have been using. Kieran, you agree with me that you have seen our compressed art blocks?
Yeah, but blocks are not weight bearers. Blocks in general, they are used for partition in general. I just because part of what we are saying now in terms of substandard materials, I remember Engineer Kashim Male some years ago when there was a construction job going on somewhere in Uyo, Akwa Ibom. It was a massive, I think it was a church or some cathedral. Something came down. I don't know what happened because the investigation, the state government got in, and then as we say, the matter. We can't continue to sweep things like this under the carpet. We also read some time ago that people were proposing the use of bamboo in place of iron rods. It said that iron rods are too expensive, particularly the Ukrainian variety, which is of great quality, not the ones that Professor Duna mentioned now, that they are using scrap metal to produce 16 mm that doesn't have the weight of or the strength of 12 mm. What is it that we can do apart from just sensitizing members of the public, getting them to be more aware? Because I'm not seeking to scare anyone. Yes, some of these structures, or most of these structures that have been collapsing, have collapsed the cost of construction. You don't know one of these high-rise buildings you will enter one of these days, and it's already very well furnished and finished, and you are in there, and then the next thing it starts. We don't have earthquakes in Nigeria or tremors, but the next thing you start seeing and it starts going down. What do we need to do? I know you've made some proposals to overcome this national embarrassment.
You see, I think we should do away with issues of trust. every system should have a check. If somebody is supposed to, look, why public buildings don't have this problem is because there's no trust. You go to a building site, like when they do the Federal Secretariat, for instance, let's see the engineer say, okay, before you start, let's test let's see your mixed design. Then they'll go and cast cubes and take them. But there's a lab. We used to have a lab here. FCD has a lab where we have NIPRID now. That used to be a laboratory, civil engineering laboratory. They will go there and test it. So you have to wait until they test and bring it back to site, and they give you approval. Now, okay, you can proceed. You bring iron rods to the site. They will take samples from all the batches. They take to FUT Mina. They take some to Kaduna Polytechnic to even do cross matching. Then they will do 1 year. Until you have that result, no project starts. So if you say trust somebody will go, and by the time you realize that you have used the wrong material, it's too late. And you close your eyes. Believe you me, you are not as scared as I am. When I enter some buildings, so the new building that they are constructing now, when I get it, I want to get out quickly. Because
exactly.
I'm not, because it will look, you see, sometimes I look at, sometimes you look at the lift door is at an angle. Once I see that, that's a red flag for me. I'll run away. So today, you can't even be too sure of these new structures that are coming up. But basically, what I'm saying that there should be there are sequences for putting up structures. Okay, we should obey those laws and stop trusting. Don't say, no, I expect, no expect. You are supposed to bring water, check the quality of water, document it. You are supposed to bring cement, check it. Somebody should document and approve it, approve sand, approve everything, so that when the thing happens, he will know that he's in trouble. Because if he knows he'll be in trouble, it's not because he's a good man or a bad man. He knows that if this happens, they'll come for him. So he will make sure it is rightly done.
So we're running out of time. Like I said, a good conversation here, because we are professionals talking. We've raised a very pertinent point in this conversation, showing reasons why we continue to experience a collapsed building in this country, even with the crack engineers, architects, and other support staff in any construction site are doing. But again, like you said, it's a matter of integrity. People cut corners to make ends meet. That's Nigerian fashion, but that's not good for us as a nation, especially when it comes to building construction. So on that note, we conclude this conversation for today. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Engineer Kashim Ali, former president of Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Thank you, sir, for being here this morning with us.
Thank you, Karen.
Shuaibu Omar, Abuja Metropolitan Management Agency. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. And again, Engineer Professor Samson Duna, Director General and CEO, Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, NEBRE. Thank you, sir, for coming. We'll engage you further, on NEBRE. No now, let's take some sports tidbits.
Isaac Success is expected to spend time on sidelines after sustaining a muscle injury in Udinese 3-0 victory against Cremonese last weekend. The Nigerian international scored one of the goals for the Little Zebras in the game, his first goal for Udinese in around a year. The 27-year-old is now expected to miss Udinese's trip to Leeds this weekend. He is also doubtful for the home clash against Napoli on May 2nd.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We'd like to appreciate your being with us. Tomorrow is yet another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. And of course, I'm appreciating Girona once more for beating Real Madrid 4-2 yesterday. Is a very, very glorious outing for Castellanos, who scored 4 goals. Since 1947, Real Madrid has not experienced that. So it's a good show for us. I'll see you again tomorrow.
And as the saying goes, stuff happens.
Yes.